Hi guys, so I've had a few people request that I do some readings from a few books, and one of those books was The Shining Ones by Christian O'Brien and Barbara Joy O'Brien. And I'm not a professional reader, so I will make mistakes, but I hope to learn from them. And I'm going to do small 10, 11, 12-minute segments, but The Shining Ones are really interesting to many people. It's what we would think of as the Annunaki or the Nephilim, even giants. The identity of the Shining Ones is really supposed to be one of the greatest secrets ever kept from humanity, or the greatest secret society known, relating to the pathway of human evolution. So there's this topic can go on forever. Many famous authors have written about the Shining Ones, including Gary Osborne, Philip Gardner, the O'Briens, and there's many people that talk about the subject as well. And it all relates to this mystery people or culture or deities that we just can't quite put our finger on, but we all want to know what they are, who they are, and why. Because we need to know. We have an innate need to understand who we really are, what we really are, and what we can be. And so it's quite understandable that a lot of people have asked me to do some of these readings, which some people say that they like my voice, but for me, when I hear my voice, I just hear a voice, and it's hard for me to listen to it because I don't see anything great about it. But my daughter likes my voice, and so I want to answer requests by people that have heard me speak on other YouTube videos. So I hope it's okay, and just remember, I'll keep doing this and I will eventually improve. So thank you guys very much. And this is the Megalithic Maiden Jj Ainsworth. The Shining Ones by Christian O'Brien and Barbara Joy O'Brien. Chapter 1. An Introduction to Doubt. The search for an alternative to commonly held religious beliefs. I think, therefore I am, a comforting thought, but Descartes was a doubter first, and a thinker second. Like many inductively thinking people, he found that the intuitive flash of doubt was very often father to the thought, and he might equally well have phrased his aphorism as, I doubt, therefore I am. Descartes lived and studied nearly 400 years ago, and seeing what he considered to be the errors and inconsistencies in which his fellow philosophers had involved themselves, he determined to build a system anew by divesting himself, first of all the beliefs that he had acquired by education or otherwise, and then he resolved to accept as true only what could stand the test of reason. Proceeding in this manner, he found that the one thing that he could not doubt was the existence of himself as a thinking being, and this ultimate certainty he expressed in his celebrated maxim, cogito ergo sum. Encapsulated in this notion, he believed that he had found the test of truth. Whatever he saw to be true, with as much certainty as he felt over his own existence, was to be accepted as worthy of belief, and whatever could not withstand that test was to be rejected. Encapsulated in this notion, he believed that he found the test of truth. There were difficulty precepts by which to live, and almost impossible to follow to the letter, but as guidelines to scientific thinking, they have a certain simplistic discipline that can prove invaluable. The great majority of scientific hypotheses with which the academic world is bombarded in these days, however confidently conceived, are ultimately discarded and replaced by alternatives. This is because all hypotheses, even those based on deductive reasoning, begin as a flight of conjecture, and this inception can have no validity until it has been tested and tried within some framework it proposed by Descartes, and it is the nature of conjectures that few can pass so searching an examination. It is from this standpoint that scientists appear to divide into two categories: one that hails each new approach with enthusiasm, and one that regards each new approach with suspicion and doubt. And it is right that this dichotomy should rule. Without the encouragement of the former group, there would be little progress, and without the restraints of the latter, there would be too much probing into unproductive byways. Enthusiasm serves to stimulate scientific progress, but the discipline of doubt ensures that it is orientated into worthwhile channels. It is when we step outside the mainstream of science into disciplines that cannot be falsified by repeated experimentation and those which march closely with the arts and humanities that the discipline of doubt becomes of paramount importance. One such discipline is archaeology, the members of which, after a great deal of arduous and painstaking work in uncovering the secrets of ancient sites, rely for progress largely on comparison and interpretation. In this sphere, one small, undetected error can become self-perpetuating and mar the whole fabric of the interpretation. And even worse, one small error in interpretation, attractive to the operator or even self-satisfying, can set up a chain reaction that can lead to a whole history being wrong conceived. It is because of this weakness that such intellectual iconoclastic attacks, as those mounted by Immanuel Vygotsky and T.C. Lethbridge in their time, received such popular support. These were doubters in the tradition of Descartes, but neither received the penetrating consideration that their work deserved. Some of it was possibly wildly in error, but they raised questions that needed to be answered. Questions in which many cases still needed to be answered today, but they were smothered by the pundits in a public pillory that gave no heed to the necessity for explicit discrimination between those ideas that could be shown to be wrong and those uncomfortable and critical areas that were obvious targets for further and more broadly based study. During more than 60 years of involvement in the interpretation of scientific data, the senior author instigated more challenges to theories that appeared to be unsoundly based than he cares to remember. In many cases, he was ultimately proved to be wrong, but occasionally he struck gold. In his younger days, these forays were concentrated in the field of structural geology, and his persistence in challenging the accepted theories of salt tectonics and mountain building in both the Zagros Mountains of southern Iran and the front ranges of the Rocky Mountains of western Canada must have been the bane of his superiors and an irritation to the traditionalists among his colleagues. And such was his involvement in the field of doubt that it would be unfair to continue to hide behind the scene of writing in the third person. It is with no sense of egotism, I hope, that I feel I should continue for a short stretch in a more personal mode. To find the origins of my inherent necessity to doubt, we must go back in time and watch a young man, just starting his career as an exploration geologist, climb a green hill in the Mesopotamian valley in order to watch the sun rise over the distant mountains. Mountains have thrilled me ever since I climbed Snowdon as a schoolboy, and it was purely on their account that in 1936 I applied to join the geological staff of the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, now the British Petroleum Company, BP. Within 3 weeks of being accepted, I was posted to that ancient and, to me, mysterious land of Persia. But in my first survey season, to my immense chagrin, I was dispatched to the rocky plains in the southwest, where my only contact with the mountains for which I yearned was the occasional glimpse of the snow-capped peaks of the Zagros Ranges far to the north and east. However, in the Middle East there are compensations, even on the plains of Persia. In that vast area in which numerous decaying mounds from ancient civilizations struggle for space with scattered outcrops of rock, I was fortunate in being placed under the tutelage of a remarkably knowledgeable man, Victor Boulou. During the previous season, he had discovered a previously unrecorded but particularly impressive mound that rose out of the plain like Silbury Hill in Wiltshire. And within a few days of starting our exploration, we made a detour from our planned route so that we could camp for a night at its foot. We were in the country of the ancient Elamites, a sturdy, independent people who stoutly resisted the dominance of the Babylonians in the last 2 millennia before the birth of Christ, and who bore in their name the etymological reminder of the Elohim, the Shining Ones. To my impressionate youth, their presence lay like a lingering scent heavily on the ground. To the next morning, after a long night of listening to my mentor, Boulou, expand on the glories of the past, I climbed to the top of the grass-covered mound to view the distant Bakhtari Mountains, where I thought my heart lay. Once the sun had risen, I turned to watch the shadows recede across patchwork fields that had once experienced the splendors of one of the greatest civilizations of the past, Sumer. Though sensing somewhat of wonder of the scene, I did not yet realize that the alchemy had begun to work, and that, before my years had passed, I should crave that dusty rock-pocked country more than the Himalayas themselves.